Welcome to Cartoon Creators, where we talk to the minds behind the shows that raised us. I'm your host, Tamar Lilienthal, and today we're talking to Cheryl Chase. Cheryl is best known as the voice of Angelica on Rugrats. We talk about how she got started in voice acting, how she landed her legendary role, and her journey to owning Angelica and shaping the character in her own way. Let's get to the episode. Hello, Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And you're our very first voice actor on the podcast. So this is exciting for us as well. Yeah, it's a new first.
Yeah, wow, great. I'm honored.
So I'm curious, I think we can get started really just by asking uh how'd you get into voice acting? Was it always your plan to like voice act in cartoons? How'd you get here?
Well, see, growing up, I always liked to imitate different voices, and I know this is dating me, but you probably don't remember the Carol Burnett show. This was way back in this was in the '60s when I was a little girl. They had different characters on there, and I used to imitate them, and I used to in college, I wanted to go into acting. I studied in New York and at the Lee Strasberg Institute, and then I moved out here, and I wanted to get into commercials and TV. Well, and then voiceover was kind of like a fallback. And I found that I was getting more opportunities in voiceover than in the on camera world. So I decided to do that. My cousin, her name is Katie Lee. She was living out here and doing a lot of different cartoon shows like oh wow, Muppet Babies and
Oh, wow.
Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. Oh, so many, a lot of different cartoons, and that was one of them. Oh, and My Little Pony. I was on My Little Pony too. That's how I started little things like that. Yeah, I when I moved out here, I found my agent and I signed with them, and it for voiceover for a cartoon. And it took me 4 years before I finally got my two series. I was doing little jobs before then, on like for Hanna-Barbera and Disney and that. But I got Rugrats and Ren and Stimpy at the same time.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, so that was, and I was actually working at the production offices of Spunko, which is Spunko is the company that put out Ren and Stimpy, and I was working there for a year before he would let me go. The boss would let me go out on different auditions, and I went and auditioned for Rugrats. The first time I didn't get it. They were just having we're having auditions for a pilot, a Rugrats pilot, and they had Tommy and Phil and Lil. So I auditioned for both, and I didn't get it. Then
Wow.
year and a half later, I had another audition. The pilot was bought by Nickelodeon, and so they needed more characters. So Paul Germain created one of the creators. He created Angelica and Chucky. And so I went and tried out for both, and I got Angelica. And I was at the time when I found out I was working on The Simpsons. I was doing Walla work on The Simpsons. It's background voices.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was working that, and then I got a call while I was there. I got a call from the agent, and he says, "Oh, you got Rugrats." I can still remember that conversation. You got Rugrats, you got Angelica, and it's like, wow, that's exciting. But I didn't, we didn't know how big it was going to get.
Right.
So, and I was really excited working and doing, working at the Ren and Stimpy production offices. I was casting coordinator there, and so I was involved already. I wasn't like desperate, like, oh, I gotta get a show. You know what I mean? So when this came, it was just like an added bonus, an added blessing to icing on the cake of what I was already doing.
Wow, that's so interesting. So I was so curious because oftentimes I feel like people do audition for other roles, other than the ones that they end up getting, and so that's so interesting that you did, do the first go around,
Yes,
and
yes,
Angelica didn't even exist yet.
I know. Yeah, but see, I guess they liked my voice quality. I asked the director, why did they choose me? What did I do? And he said, well, we had a lot of different girls, different, audition tapes. We had a bunch of them to choose from. We chose you and this other girl. So we sent those two tapes to New York, where the network was, for the main people that run the show. And the director goes, oh, let's just go with Cheryl. They didn't know who to go with. They just decided to go with me. And because of that choice, it just changed my whole life. And it's wow, like just a simple little decision. Let's just go with Cheryl.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
that's so interesting. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah. And another thing, this is regarding Tommy Pickles. In the beginning, see, E.G. Daily was not the original voice. There
Oh.
was, yeah, there was another voice. I'm sorry, I don't know her name. She was so sweet. But she recorded, I think, 10 episodes. And then the network said, you know what? They didn't think she sounded enough like a little boy, so they recast. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, this poor girl who just loved being a part of everything, she left the show, and they brought in E.G. Daily, and which is sad for the poor girl. I mean, good for E.G., but I feel
Right.
for the other girl, she brought us all Christmas presents at the Christmas party, and so I don't know, I felt bad. Yeah.
Wow, wow. No, it's really I mean, so much of, the stories that you often hear about this industry and this space is just kind of chance in either direction.
Yeah, right. It's so fleeting, it's like when you're in the entertainment business, it's not, you have to always have something to fall back on, and watch your pennies, because your show can stop just like that.
Yeah, wow, wow. So, I'm curious because you were talking about how, um, that one decision of, like, "Let's go with Cheryl," kinda,
Yeah,
changed your life.
yeah.
Um, so I'm curious really because Angelica became such an iconic character, obviously, and I feel like you hear stories of like, I don't know, Daniel Radcliffe, for example, who after playing Harry Potter, like had a lot of difficulty almost with like that was the only way that people saw him. And so has that ever been, difficult to be always associated with such an iconic character? Or does the fact that she was a cartoon like provide some anonymity that people don't necessarily always know it was you?
Well, I don't know. I think sometimes it came into play where I'm like, oh, she plays the bitch character, Cheryl Chase. She plays, and in different auditions, I would get they're swayed towards that type of cartoon character. This was so funny. This was years ago, and there was a cartoon show that my cousin was doing, and they wanted a Cheryl Chase type, she said. So I
Oh,
thought, this should be easy. I'll just go in there and do it. So I went there, and it was Cheryl Chase. I was really, and I didn't get the part. They
what?
No, I mean, it's crazy, but you just never know what these casting directors and these producers are thinking. It's like if they wanted a Cheryl Chase type, I'm Cheryl Chase. Here I am. I'll do it, and they didn't.
Wow. Wow,
Kind of
that's
crazy, huh?
crazy. Huh, yeah,
Yeah,
what a story. So,
I know.
I mean, you kind of said it that, like, um, that you came to be associated almost with, like you said, playing, like, the bitch character almost, but,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
was that hard to like, how much of Angelica was prescripted versus, like, how much did you shape her to be? What was that interplay like? Because, like I said, we've never had, a voice actor on the podcast yet, and,
Mhm.
um, I would imagine that, we're cartoon creators, I would imagine that there's an aspect of, creating that character once you're cast, like, for yourself, but I'm wondering what that interplay was like.
Well, see, in the beginning, Paul Germain, one of the creators and executive producers, he would be the voice director, and he would get us girls in the booth, and he would give us line readings, and he would have us say the lines exactly like he wanted them to be, and so he's kind of honed us into learning about our characters. We I It kind of was second nature. I mean, after it's kind of, you get into a groove and you kind of understand the character more by the different ways that the director sees the character to be perceived as. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
No,
Uh,
you are, yeah.
Okay. So as I got more adept at doing the character, we didn't need that he just let us go and do our thing, acting, giving our own interpretations. And if you know, the, I mean, even now doing the reboot, we work with Charlie Adler. He's a brilliant voice director, and we know our characters, so he has us do it how we see it. Always, sometimes they have different ways of how they want to play it, and so he'll just give line readings, or he'll say, no, be this way, be that way, or he'll give direction, and then we'll do it. Us voice ladies will do it. So yeah, there's many different ways to bring out the character.
Right, but that makes sense. I mean, at this point, you've been doing Angelica for so many years that,
Yes,
like,
yes.
I would hope that everyone would defer to you and not vice versa, like, so many years in, but
Yeah, yeah, now they do. They do. They trust my instincts.
good, good. I'm glad. I'm
I
glad.
know, right? I know.
And do you have a favorite episode of Rugrats, or one that was, like, particularly notable, had a story that, like, was the most exciting to work on?
Yeah, I liked, and a lot of fans love it's I think it's a fan favorite in mine too. It's where Angelica breaks a leg, and
Yes.
yeah, remember, and she fakes breaking her leg because she wants attention. And so she's staying at Dee and Steedie's I mean Dee Dee and Stu's place. And so she pretends to break her leg, so she's all set up in the bedroom and she has her little clicker, and whenever she wants something she just rings the bell, and your Stu comes in and caters to her every whim. And then 4 o'clock in the morning she wants chocolate pudding, so Stu has to go out to the store and get the chocolate pudding and bring it home and make it. And as he's, stirring the chocolate pudding, Dee Dee comes in and says, "What are you doing?" And then Stu says, "I'm losing control of my life." And that was, and fans just love that part. That they like. That's a fun cartoon. It was that one was good, and the trial where Angelica breaks a lamp, Tommy's lamp, and she puts all the babies on trial because she doesn't want to own up to her mistake. And so,
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that one.
totally, totally. I feel like for me the most iconic was just like the Passover episode, simply because, I feel like every single synagogue setting I was ever in enjoyed playing
Yeah.
that. So
Oh, right. Yeah. I have to say I don't remember the Passover episode. I think they did a reenactment of something that the Jewish faith does. I don't I don't remember it, but
yeah, no, they had a few. They really, I think that it's so interesting because I chatted with Scott Gray, who actually sent me your way, on the podcast, and he's awesome. We had so many conversations about this because Rugrats did a Passover episode. Rugrats, I believe, did a Hanukkah episode. Um,
I
and
think so, yes.
yeah, and he was talking a bit about like controversies around Grandpa Boris and people thinking that Rugrats kind of had Jewish stereotyping. And, I just remember I told him, like, I remember as a kid just feeling so seen by Rugrats. On the contrary, like, I don't, it was so real. And so I loved, I don't know, or maybe they were just sh- drilled into my brain by, like I said, every like synagogue and summer camp setting I ever went to. But they were
Yeah.
awesome. They were great episodes.
Well, another thing that where it comes to feeling real is the writers, they would get into the writers' room and they would all talk about what happened at home with their kids. And
Mm,
so actually a lot of the experiences from the cartoon from their bringing up their kids, they put it in the cartoons for the Rugrats. So a lot of it is coming from their real experiences with their children.
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's how it feels authentic and draws people in, right? So
Right? Yes.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Hmm.
Well, I know it that I think we'll try to fit in two more questions. My first question is, so you've done sort of like Rugrats spin-offs and all sorts of Rugrats things over the years, right? And I'm curious, what is your view of that? I wonder if like, you know, I'm sure there's a part of you that loves that it kind of reaches new generations and gets like, almost like a cat gets like nine lives. Um,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
do you ever find that like you feel like the creative energy is running out, or like what's your take on all of the spin-offs and the continuing sort of regeneration of it?
I think the reboot was a great thing to do because it did introduce the children of today. What a classic it was back in the 90s, and it brought the kids that watched it back then are now adults with their own children, and that's where I would get a lot of the adult fans would say, now I get to introduce this my childhood to my children, and that's exciting for me to see because Rugrats on a hit so many people on a grand scale. I mean, Rugrats
Mm,
was $1 billion global franchise. We had Rugrats was in every country, and they had actors back then, for their own country, with in their own language doing the Rugrats, Russia and China.
yeah.
It was all over, and so it just made a world such an impact on people. And
But you feel like the stories have still been fresh for you to come in
oh
and,
yeah, oh absolutely, absolutely. The Kate Boudelier and Rachel Lippman and Scott Gray, and they really breathed new life into a franchise that was sleeping for 30 years.
yeah.
Hats off to them. Like, it's a huge undertaking to make a cartoon. It's unbelievable everything that has to go along with it. I'm not one to speak on it, but it takes a village, is all I want to say,
No,
to
that
get
makes
every.
a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we close out here, um, I'll ask the last question, which is there anything that you're particularly excited to be working on now? Like what's coming up for you?
Oh, well, yeah. I besides doing voiceover, I love to write children's books, and I have a new coming out. It's my second one. I'm starting out.
That's
It's
awesome.
it's called Chirpy Burpy. It's a little bird that burps instead of chirps, and So he's a sweet little guy. He enters the contest and he chirps his heart out, but he's really he thinks he's this great singer, but he's burping and but he did win the contest because the judges are also burpers. So he won, and he was the best singer in the world, and he got a year's supply of pudding pops and a big golden trophy. So he's happy. So that book is coming out um, um, in the spring of next year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Thanks for sharing. I'll I'll have to keep an eye out for it. Because
Yes,
I love
definitely.
children's books as well, and that's cute. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you again for coming on. We so appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I wish you good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Cartoon Creators. We would love if you connected with us on one of our social media channels. Have a comment, question, or an idea for a guest we should bring on to the pod? Email us at info@cartooncreators.com. Both words starting with a K, of course.